Hello, everyone. Today I'd like to share with you a memorable experience, my first solo journey on a city bus. At the age of 15, I was used to being driven everywhere by my parents or catching a ride on a motorbike with friends. But one autumn morning, I decided to navigate public transport all by myself. Looking back, that hassle-filled 2-hour trip taught me more than just how to read a bus timetable. It showed me how to solve unexpected problems calmly and connect with strangers in a busy urban environment. It started with a simple idea. I had planned to visit a cousin who lived across the city, near the central bus station. My parents were busy with work, and calling a taxi seemed too expensive for such a short trip. I thought, why not try the bus? Although I felt a little nervous about getting lost, I believed that at 15 I was old enough to figure it out on my own. I spent the previous evening preparing. First, I checked an online map and identified the 2 bus lines I needed. Then I noted down the stop names in both English and Vietnamese, since sometimes different drivers announced stops in one language only. I also counted out enough cash to cover the fares and a small buffer in case I missed a stop and had to ride a little longer. Finally, I set an alarm for 7 a.m., so I could arrive at the bus stop by 7:30, long before peak hour traffic. The next morning, I woke up to a thin layer of mist covering the streets. The air felt cool and fresh, an unusual treat during the hot season. I double-checked my backpack, wallet, phone, map printout, a bottle of water, and a small snack in case I got hungry. Then I stepped outside. The bus stop lay 2 blocks away on a quiet side street. As I walked, I nervously rehearsed aloud, "Excuse me, driver, could you tell me when we reach Le Douan Street?" I avoided making eye contact with neighbors, but I did smile at a stray cat that darted across the sidewalk. Nearing the corner, I saw a tall green pole topped with a small sign reading Bus Stop 23, all routes. A family of 3 was already waiting there. The parents sipped coffee from paper cups while their little daughter fidgeted with her scarf. I joined them and took a deep breath. It felt surprisingly comforting to be surrounded by people, even if they were strangers. At precisely 7:20, I heard the rumble of an engine. A sleek, white and blue bus bearing the number 23 appeared at the end of the road. It rolled to a gentle stop in front of us, its doors opening automatically with a soft whoosh. The driver, an older gentleman wearing a crisp blue uniform, glanced at me as I approached. I handed him my 20,000 dong note, and he punched a small ticket with a tiny stamp. "Marble Square?" I asked, pointing to my printed list. "Yes, Marble Square," he replied in English, then switched to Vietnamese, "Ban Đi Den Dao?" I repeated the stop name in Vietnamese just to be safe and then moved past the yellow handrail into the aisle. The interior felt surprisingly spacious. Light filtered in through large windows, and a mild scent of detergent lingered in the air, probably from the early morning cleaning. The seats were arranged in pairs facing forward, upholstered in a muted gray fabric. I chose a window seat halfway down, hoping it would be less crowded and give me a clear view of the route. As the bus pulled away, I noticed how carefully the driver steered through narrow streets, dodging motorbikes that swerved in and out of traffic. Occasionally, the bus lurched to one side when he braked too quickly, eliciting an apologetic sorry over the PA system. I gripped the edge of my seat but tried to relax by looking at the passing scenery, rows of fruit stalls, small bakeries with pastries lined up in glass cases, and elderly citizens practicing Tai Chi in a park. About 10 minutes into the ride, the bus slowed and stopped near a busy intersection. A dozen people hurried on, clutching umbrellas even though the sun was shining brightly. Among them was a university student wearing earbuds. She scanned a transport card and smiled at me before settling into the seat opposite. I nodded politely. While we moved on, I took out my phone to check the route. I had to transfer at Marble Square to Bus 5. According to the map, that transfer point was a large plaza with a street vendor selling banh mi. The smell of grilled pork and fresh cilantro made my stomach rumble. I made a mental note, I should eat there on my way back. Suddenly, we hit a pothole and jolted sideways. A soft groan came from a passenger behind me who had been dozing against the window. The driver muttered something under his breath in Vietnamese, probably a curse at the poor road conditions, and continued on. I realized that public transport meant dealing with uncertainties. The road might be bumpy, the schedule could slip, and stops might be announced unclearly. Yet each challenge was also an opportunity to learn. As we neared Marble Square, I prepared to get off. I stood up, grabbed the overhead rail, and tapped the bell cord. The bus slowed and then stopped near a sign that read Marble Square Bus Terminal. I thanked the driver and stepped onto the pavement. The plaza was bustling, street hawkers selling iced coffee, office workers scrolling on their phones, and a group of students running to catch the next bus. I found the stand for Bus 5 and consulted my map once more. Within minutes, another bus pulled in. I boarded, paid my fare, and found a seat near the middle this time. The ride to my cousin's neighborhood took about 15 minutes. During that stretch, I observed how people behaved on a crowded bus. Some struck up conversations, others stared at their phones, and a few simply closed their eyes to rest. When the bus reached Noom Street, I tapped my shoulder lightly against the window beside my stop and rang the bell again. The driver pulled over at a small curb with a faded yellow line. I stepped off, said thank you in Vietnamese, and headed down the street. A few minutes later, I arrived at a cheerful yellow house with green shutters, my cousin's home. She greeted me at the gate with a big hug. We spent the afternoon sharing stories over iced tea and banh mi from the plaza stall I had admired. I recounted every detail, the bus stops, the people, the slight delays, and how I overcame my fear of getting on and off alone. My cousin listened attentively and then said, "You handled that like a seasoned commuter." I laughed, realizing how much more confident I felt. That day marked a turning point. I learned to consult maps carefully, communicate clearly with drivers, and stay calm under pressure. Over the next months, I began using the bus to get to school and part-time tutoring classes. Each trip became smoother as I memorized routes and gathered insider tips, like which seat offered the best view or where to board for a direct ride. By the time I turned 16, I was something of an expert. Friends would ask me for advice, and I would happily point them toward the right bus and explain how to pay with a contactless card. Sometimes I even helped elderly neighbors flag the correct bus. I never imagined that one simple decision, to ride the bus alone, would open up so many possibilities. Reflecting on that autumn morning, I see how small steps can build independence. Taking public transport taught me to plan ahead, adapt when things go wrong, and engage with my community in a new way. It also sparked my interest in geography and urban planning. I became fascinated by how transport systems affect people's lives. Today, I still take buses regularly, and each journey reminds me of that first ride, the mix of fear and excitement, the kindness of strangers, and the thrill of mastering something unfamiliar. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope you found it useful and that you feel encouraged to try new experiences in your own life. Whether it's navigating a bus network or learning another language, stepping out of your comfort zone can lead to unexpected growth. Good luck with your English studies, and I'll see you next time for another IELTS listening practice.